You're listening to The Murder in My Family, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including Missing Persons, DNA ID, Beyond Bizarre True Crime, Zodiac Speaking, Scene of the Crime, 3 Men and a Mystery, and All Things Crime. All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its host, or sponsors. If you would like to discuss the murder in your family on this podcast, please be sure to visit themurderinmyfamily.com for more information. You can support this podcast by visiting patreon.com/themurderinmyfamily. This episode may contain unsettling material or subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of The Murder in My Family. I'm your host, Mike Morford. In this episode, we'll be discussing the case of a kind and caring woman murdered in cold blood in her own home at the hands of a stranger who she believed needed her help. We'll jump into this episode after some quick housekeeping. Independent podcasts like this one depend on word of mouth to bring in new listeners. So if you find that you enjoy this show, please take a minute to rate and review it wherever you listen to your podcast. And be sure to introduce a friend to the show and invite them to listen. With your help, The Murder in My Family can continue to grow and reach a new audience. To learn more about the show or the cases we discuss, please visit themurderinmyfamily.com. You can also find us on Twitter with the handle @MurderInMyFam, or by searching for the Murder in My Family podcast on Facebook. If you'd like to support this show through a Patreon donation, it's always appreciated, and you can do so by visiting patreon.com/The Murder in My Family. Benefits of supporting the show on Patreon include early access to ad-free episodes of the show, plus bonus content not heard in regular episodes. Support may also include thank you cards, stickers, and more. If you prefer to, you can also support the show through a PayPal donation by visiting paypal.me/The Murder in My Family. In each episode, I'll give shout-outs to any new supporters. In this episode, I'd like to thank Aaron Newbold, and thank you to all the supporters that generously donate to help keep the show growing and improving. One last note, please consider supporting any of the sponsors that you hear on The Murder in My Family, the way that those sponsors support the show. It's with our sponsor support that the show can go on and continue to provide a platform to share these stories with you in every episode. Thank you, and now on with the show. Lorraine Martinez Salas Chaney was born on October 8, 1957 in Los Angeles, California. Growing up, she was extremely close to her twin sister Laura, a closeness that continued into adulthood. In fact, Laura named her firstborn daughter Lorraine after her sister. Lorraine, who was divorced, reunited with her high school sweetheart Robert Chaney, and the pair wed in 2017, just 2 years before her life was cut short due to a senseless act of violence. Lorraine had moved to Tucson from Los Angeles in 2018, just 1 year after Laura had moved there. She wanted to be close to her sister. Lorraine was looking forward to her life in retirement. For the 8 months that she lived in Tucson, she went to Laura's house every single morning for coffee. Sometimes, like she did on the morning of February 26, 2019, she would bring her laundry over and wash it while they chatted. On what would become their final visit, the two sisters went to the Enterprise Rent-A-Car location just across Valencia Road from Lorraine's apartment. They were excited to be renting a car for an upcoming trip they were taking to California. The two sisters planned to leave on the 20th of February, just 2 days later. Just after lunchtime, at around 1:20 p.m., Lorraine said goodbye to Laura and headed home. This was the last time that Laura would ever see her sister, and the last text Laura sent to Lorraine at around 5:30 p.m. would go forever unanswered. At around 4 p.m. that day, Robert Chaney left the apartment he shared with Lorraine on the southwest side of Tucson for a quick food run. It was a simple trip to pick up a pizza for dinner, nothing out of the ordinary. But shockingly, only about 10 minutes later when he returned home, he walked into a nightmare. When he entered their home, he found that Lorraine was nude, struggling to breathe, and lying in a pool of her own blood on the living room floor. A knife was next to her inside-out clothing on the floor. Lorraine's face and neck had been cut. Before Robert could even realize what he was seeing, a man dashed out of the bathroom in front of him, and he approached Robert, putting his fist up, threatening him, before fleeing through the front door. Robert raced out of the apartment to get help at the leasing office of the Woods, their apartment complex. An employee there called 911. Employees of the Woods were at the Chaney's apartment when officers from the Tucson Police Department arrived. The officers attempted to perform CPR on Lorraine until medics from the Tucson Fire Department got there. But sadly, 61-year-old Lorraine Martinez Salas Chaney was pronounced dead soon after. There was a sandwich on the table with one bite taken out of it, along with a full glass of milk. Articles about Lorraine's death only mentioned that Lorraine had died with signs of obvious trauma, but the details of what happened to her were cruel and brutal. Laura got the heartbreaking and unbearable news that her twin sister Lorraine was dead. But deep inside, she already knew it. Call it a sixth sense or whatever, something perhaps that only twins share. It turns out that Laura was in the middle of a job interview that day when a terrible feeling came over her, and she had to excuse herself and leave the interview. She knew something was wrong with her sister, but didn't know exactly what. She tried to reach out to Lorraine by phone, but got no reply. Laura remembers telling her sister, "You know, just because you're in a small town doesn't mean crime doesn't exist here." And she constantly warned her sister to be careful, despite the small town feeling of Tucson. The reality is that crime there is pretty high. There are over 16,000 felony arrests in 2019 alone. According to open data, Lorraine's was one of 30 first-degree homicides in the city in 2019. If you look on a map, there have been 7 homicides in the last 5 years, including Lorraine's, in the immediate area of the Woods apartment complex, and over 20 murders within just a few minutes' drive. The night of Lorraine's murder, 22-year-old Robert J. O'Connor was arrested on suspicion of first-degree murder. Police spotted him walking down Valencia Road outside the complex. There was blood on his pants, his waistband, and his shoes. But he told police that he hadn't been to the Woods complex in 2 months. He became belligerent with police. And when they tried to take him into custody, he said, "You better be arresting me for warrants and not for murder." Something that was completely unprompted. Today, Robert O'Connor is being held on $1 million bail. Authorities were able to gather that O'Connor had shown up at the Woods complex on February 25th asking for food. Lorraine's husband, Robert, was home at the time. And Lorraine, who had a big heart, felt that this man was too young to be hungry, and she invited him inside to give him something to eat for breakfast. She then packed a sandwich to take with them for later. When Lorraine told Laura about the incident, Laura warned her sister that she shouldn't open her door to strangers. But Lorraine had a soft spot for people, and she had just lost her job due to an illness just 5 years before, so she wanted to help other people if she could. She recalled for Laura what it was like to worry about being able to provide for herself, and she felt blessed because she had family to take care of her, and they always did, whereas O'Connor didn't seem to have the same sort of fortune in his life. He told Lorraine that he lived with his uncle who had an apartment in the Woods complex, but they had been locked out. And even just before she was attacked, it seemed Lorraine was trying to help this young man again, with the sandwich left out on the table, perhaps pointing to her giving him another meal. 22-year-old Robert O'Connor has a recent history of violent crimes, with multiple arrests and complaints against him in 2017 alone. In April of that year, he was arrested for disorderly conduct just half a mile from the Woods apartment complex. In October 2017, O'Connor was arrested for accosting a woman in the laundry room of the same apartment complex. Those charges were dropped after he was deemed incompetent to stand trial. At the same time, he was deemed not to be a threat to the public, but was sent to La Frontera, a mental health facility for treatment. But even after the treatment, O'Connor was charged in multiple incidents involving violence, but each time the charges were dropped. His history of mental health struggles, including a stay at La Frontera, began when he was just 7 years old. Overall, O'Connor had spent time in La Frontera from around 2003 until 2015 when he turned 18, and it appears that when he left, he was out on his own. We can't let all people with mental health issues be stigmatized as violent criminals, which Lorraine obviously didn't feel was the case when she decided to help someone who she felt was in need. But sadly for Lorraine, in this case, the man she was trying to help was violent. It appears that Akana will be locked away for some time, unless something unforeseen happens that puts him back out on the street. If you happen to have any information about the murder of Lorraine Martinez Salas Chaney, or about the possible crimes of Robert J. Akana, you can call the Tucson Police Department at 520-791-4444. Robert, Lorraine's husband of just 2 years, was understandably shaken by his wife's murder, and he was robbed of their future together. As far as Lorraine's twin sister Laura, for her, it may seem as if a part of her is missing, someone who was with her even before she was born, and who shared so much over the years together as twins and as friends. Laura sat down with me to share her sister's tragic story and the profound effect losing Lorraine has had on her. That conversation is coming up in just a moment. Hi, Laura, and welcome to The Murder of My Family. I want to thank you for coming on to discuss your sister Lorraine's case.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. Lorraine was known as Nene. Is that her nickname?
Yes, that's her nickname. We all call her Nene.
Yeah, that's something that I read in a lot of the research that that was something she went by. She wasn't just your sister, she was your twin sister. And so I can only guess that relationship between you was a very close one. And we'll talk about that. Before we do, can you tell us a little bit about Nene, what kind of person she was?
Okay, so my sister and I are identical twins, and I do still say it as not a past tense because you never really shake being a twin. We were born in Los Angeles, born and raised. My sister and I always worked together, went to school together, did everything together. We even married twins at one time together. She was a lot like me. I mean, she was very kind and very motherly. My sister herself never had children, so she became mother or surrogate mother to my children. She was extremely overprotective of myself and my family. She was very loving. She was, I want to say beautiful, but then that would be complimenting myself, but I'm going to say it anyway. She had a beautiful soul, beautiful face. She had big, giant green eyes, and they came into the room before she did. She was the greatest person I've ever known as far as being kind and giving, and she would do without to give to others. So basically, she was killed for kindness.
Yeah, and it sounds like from everything that I've read that she was really someone that was a caring person that would help other people and stuff. So the fact that she was taken in such a brutal way is just terrible. As a twin, you know, I think siblings, sisters in particular, are very close a lot of times, but a twin, I think, is a special relationship in its own. And I've heard that if one twin hurts themselves, another one can sometimes feel it, things like that. Was it very close between the two of you? Did you have a special bond between you?
Oh, yeah. The bond was before conception because identical twins are in the same womb as, you know, like the same sac. And so I believe from what we have been told our whole entire life that bond is formed. An identical twin, that's the first person you love before you know your mother. And we loved our mother, but our bond was exceptional. And we have two brothers, and they're 12 years apart. And they will tell you that they stepped aside because they knew that the bond was different. It's like we didn't have another sister to have any competition. It was just us. And that bond is something, it's hard to explain because I don't know what it's like to not be a twin. And neither did she. We didn't know what that was like. That was very normal for us to be so close to each other, but we could not be without each other. Even though, we at one time married, and this was the first marriage we married twin brothers. And the reason we thought it was a good idea was because we thought that they would understand the closeness and the bond and the lack of separation, because we could not be separated, not for long anyway. So when we married them, they are fraternal twins, and unfortunately, they didn't get the bond. So we worked together for 20 years. We carpooled together. We ate lunch together. We took breaks together. And when I retired, she retired first. I retired second. And when I retired, I moved to Tucson full time. The bond was so close. My sister couldn't be without me. And she came right behind me, and she and her second husband moved to Tucson so that we could be together once again. And 7 months later, that was taken from us. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's just, it sounds like a lot of siblings as they get older, their everyday lives, whether it's jobs, relationships, kids, whatever, they sort of get their own thing going on. And the relationship between siblings, sometimes there's a little separation there, but it sounds like the two of you were tight all the way along, that stuff didn't get in the way of your relationship.
Well, we didn't allow it. There was no outsiders allowed. If you didn't get it, you didn't belong in our circle. That's how much of a bond we had. And it wasn't intentional. It was just the way we felt about each other. We could not be without each other. Even if we didn't, because I commuted from Los Angeles to Tucson because I married somebody from Tucson for 17 years. But I went home to Los Angeles 3 days a week. I mean, we lived in the same home those 17 years that I commuted because we couldn't be without each other. And there was no separating us. I mean, they tried to do that when we were in junior high and high school because they couldn't tell us apart. And we, being a twin, you can pull a lot of things off, trust me. There were a lot of shenanigans done in junior high and high school where we traded classes, we took tests for one another. And when they caught on to it, I think they did, they separated us by schools, not just classes, schools. That created a great deal of anxiety for me and my sister our senior year. But, we had to finish school. We did that, and we still could not be without each other. Being without her now is so strange because there was a time 5 years before she was murdered that she was terminally ill. She was supposed to die from this illness she had, and she recovered. And so she was extremely grateful. She was, Christian woman that believed that God saved her for a reason. So she became even more generous and kind and shared everything she had. And there was a time when I had cancer. My sister took care of me better than anyone could. And my daughters really tried. But the loving attention and the caregiving she gave, not just to me, but anybody in our family who was sick, it's undescribable how she could do that. When I'm not cut the same way as her when it came to caregiving, I will say to this day that my sister literally saved my life when I had cancer. And she would say that I saved hers when she was terminally ill and did not die.
Wow.
So for both of us to have been terminally ill at one time and not pass away and then get murdered, how do you digest that? My sister was a badass, Mike. I've seen my sister knock guys out. She had a powerful punch and she didn't take any crap.
Wow.
But she became a bit of a softie when she got well. And that's why she did what she did, because she thought she was being motherly. And it doesn't change in my heart that she got killed for being kind. But the bond, the day that she was murdered, she was with me all day that day. And she left my home, and I had an appointment, a job interview, actually. When I was in the job interview, I was, interviewing well, answering the questions, and all of a sudden, my head started to spin, like the room was spinning around, and the interviewer asked me, "What's wrong?" And I said, I don't know. And it was 4:20. That's when she was murdered.
Wow.
But I had to leave because something was wrong. By the time I drove down the street, because I had promised her that I would come back to her apartment after I finished the interview, I couldn't get through because there were police cars blocking her street. And I didn't put two and two together, but I knew I had to get there. I kept calling her, no answer. So I tried to go the back way. I couldn't go through the back way. I came home and kept telling my husband, something's wrong with my sister. She doesn't answer and we can't get through. And we did call the police to find out what was going on over there, and they would not tell me. But I think that bond, the twin thing, the twinergy, whatever anybody wants to label it, it definitely told me that there was something very seriously wrong. And I did not get told until 9:30 that night.
Wow. Did you, when you first, at the job interview, when you started feeling sick or funny or whatever, was your first thought something's wrong with Nene, or you really didn't know what was wrong?
Oh, no, something's wrong with my sister.
Oh, you felt that immediately, right away when you started feeling like that.
This isn't the first feeling that happens when something would happen to her, or something, she was in danger of some sort, or trouble. You always knew, and the same for her, but we could always find each other, call each other, track each other down. Even before cell phones, we could still find each other when we had that feeling. But this feeling was a little bit more severe. I can't describe it to anyone, except I knew something was wrong. I thought maybe my sister had a heart attack or something. And so I knew I had to leave the interview, and I told him, I have to leave. I'm sorry, something's wrong at home. And I just couldn't pinpoint anything other than she's ill. That is what I thought, because she had been so ill for so long. That was the thought. And I'll never forget it, because I was frozen, paralyzed. Oh. It's a really, and I guess that comes from the bond and the love, and I can't describe it to anybody, because I know it's unusual and not everybody experiences stuff like that. Usually that kind of premonition, or whatever you call it, comes from a mother or a father. But being a twin, not only is your sister, sibling, you're motherly to one another, if you know what I mean. Yeah. You care for each other that way. And so I felt there is definitely something wrong, but I couldn't get to her. And I have nightmares over that, because I couldn't save my sister. And I know it wasn't, my fault, but that's not the point.
Sure.
I always we always saved one another. And this day, I could not.
Yeah. And I think that's an amazing thing that probably identical twins could understand that the rest of us don't know what you're talking about, that bond that even, when you're not in the same room, you sort of know something's wrong with the other person. But the downside of it is that, like in this instance, something terrible's happened to your sister and you're getting a sense of it. So, as cool as it is to have that kind of connection, there's a downside to it in this kind of tragedy. What happened that day? Can you walk us through how you finally did find out what happened to her and what you were told?
Okay, so that day, like I said, I couldn't get to the apartment. I tried the back way. I couldn't get to her street that was completely blocked by about 30 Tucson Police Department vehicles. I came home, and this was about now 4:30-ish maybe, and I told my husband that I couldn't reach my sister, and he told me to calm me down. Maybe your sister fell asleep because she got here at 7 o'clock in the morning. You guys were together all day, maybe because she did take naps. So I tried to accept that, but I kept calling her husband's phone, who never answered his phone. So that wasn't odd, but the fact that she still didn't answer my text messages. And at that time, I didn't know the police had already confiscated her phone and my brother-in-law's phone. So it was 9:15, and my husband, I was already in bed, and it was really cold. So I was under the blankets already, and I was falling asleep. And I tried one more time to call her, and she didn't answer. And then my husband walked in my bedroom and said, "There's 3 ladies here, and they said they need to talk to you." And I said, "It's 9:15. Who's here?" And he said, "I don't know who they are." That was strange, but I felt fear. And I didn't think the absolute worst yet, but I felt fear. I walked out. There were 3 ladies standing in my corridor. And I said, yes. They were really young, too. And they had Pima County jackets on. And I didn't know what they wanted. And I said, what do you want? And they were silent. They said nothing. They just kept looking at me. All of a sudden, I turned my head, which I didn't see when I first walked out. I saw my brother-in-law sitting at the dining room table. And they all looked at him at the same time I did. And he said, and I knew. I just knew. But he said, "I'm sorry that we have to tell you this, but Nene was killed tonight." And I said, "You let my sister drive in the dark?" This is what I thought, because she had night blindness. And he said, "Nene didn't die in a car accident. She was murdered." And the room just echoed like a buzzing in my ear. And I was like out of my body for a second, like and I said it. Can I cuss on here?
You can say anything you want. Absolutely.
Okay. So I said, "I'm fucking dreaming and I'm going back to bed." And I turned around and was starting to walk back to my room because I was like, he did not say that, right? And my husband stopped me. And he said, "Baby, you're not dreaming." And I said, "I am, because Nene would not get killed. She's a badass. Nothing would happen to her like that." And then it became reality because my oldest daughter was living here at the time with her sons. And my daughter's name is Lorraine. My first child was named after her. And my daughter walked out of the room and started screaming because she heard what Robert said. And I fell on the floor. And I was in shock for several minutes when my husband was trying to retrieve me from the floor into a chair. And I was just screaming and screaming. And it was like never ending. And then I told him I have to tell my brothers. And he said he would do it. And I said, no, I'll do it. So I called one brother, and I called my younger brother. And he's a joker. So he said, when he answered the phone, nobody calls you at 9:30 at night. And he said, what's wrong? Why are you calling me at 9:30 at night? And I said, I have to tell you something. And when I told him, he said, I know you're kidding, right? And I couldn't talk anymore. I gave the phone to my husband. And then he said, you need to call your other brother. And he said, I'll try. But if he doesn't answer, I'll drive to his house. And he said, okay. And then the phone wouldn't stop ringing after that, my phone. There were detectives calling me. There were my family members, and I didn't want to talk to anybody. I mean, I didn't know details. I was not told everything until the next day when the police came to interview Robert again. Because Robert stayed here at my home. I didn't want him to go back where the crime scene wasn't cleaned yet. So I told him to stay here. So at some point of the night, somebody brought his vehicle over here with the car keys and the house keys together. And there were police swarmed all over my house, and I just wanted everybody to leave. I just couldn't believe this happened. And I was in denial. Yeah. And so go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say it sounds like a shocking situation where you just don't want to believe that it's really happening.
Well, I mean, okay, what Robert did tell me, my brother-in-law, her husband, was that at about 4:15, he decided that he was going to get a pizza. Well, here's a twin thing for you. Me and my sister hate pizza, but both of our husbands love it. So my sister had been at my house all day, so she was probably hungry by this time. And she decided, I don't want pizza. I'll make a sandwich. And the reason I know that is because the sandwich was taken as evidence off of her table. And the kind of sandwich it was, I knew it was my sister's. So Robert went to go pick up the pizza. And he was gone 10 or 15 minutes. And when he returned, he found my sister on the kitchen floor in just her socks. And that would be not something she would just walk across her house with no clothes on. So we're not sure exactly. We only go by what Robert tells us happened. But when Robert was trying to resuscitate her, because he thought she had a heart attack as well. He didn't see the blood yet. And he heard somebody flush the toilet from my sister's bedroom. And he walked out of the room. And it was the guy that had been bugging my sister for several days that week. It started with, my sister was a smoker, and she was outside smoking. And it started with, do you have an extra cigarette? And they started a conversation. This was like 7 a.m. And she told me all about it. And I told her, don't talk to strangers. Just because this is a little town doesn't mean that there's, no crime here. And then she realized that day before, when she was in my house, that she was missing her debit card. And I told her, are you sure your little friend didn't steal your debit card? Then she became concerned. The night before she was killed, I picked her up and we went to go pick up her prescription. We went to the casino. We came back home. I dropped her off and I saw him, but I didn't know it was him until I saw him on the news. Oh. And she looked nervous when she saw him, and she went straight into the house. So he had talked to her several times. She did feel sorry for him and gave him food. But he told her that he lived there and that his uncle had locked him out. And he had his keys. And she asked him why, and she told me this, why did he lock you out? Because I came home past my curfew. Now, if you ever saw his picture, he looked like he was about 15 years old. But she didn't know that. He was 22 at the time. He's 25 now. And still incarcerated and has never had a visitor. I don't understand his family dynamics for sure, but nobody seems to care that he's in jail. And I have been to court conference hearings 35 times.
Oh, that's a lot to go through after all of this. And it's just,
yeah,
it's crazy to think that this life-changing, terrible moment just happened in a 10 or 15 minute time period when her husband, Robert, ran out for a pizza. I mean, how many of us leave the house to get a pizza or something and then come back, 10 or 15 minutes later? You don't expect anything like that to happen while you're gone. But
nope.
And then on top of it, for him to walk in while the guy's still there.
But he didn't know that he was there. He didn't know that. He just popped out of the room. Yeah. And he told Robert, I'll kill you too. And then he ran. So that had to be horrible. I mean, Robert has to live with that too. And it just got worse because we had a trial date set for a year later, exactly a year later. We were supposed to go to trial on 2/26/20, and that changed because of some different evidence and stuff that they wanted to put the cases together because of they never had a DNA on him until he killed my sister and left his DNA all over her apartment. And so other hits were coming up. So there are now today more cases combined. They did not separate the cases. We were supposed to go to court on our birthday, Mike, October 8th, 2021, and it changed again. Then we got a new prosecutor. This happened, that happened. And in between this time, my husband, who was my rock, who has, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have got through the first 2.5 years. He went with me to every court hearing, everything. He died in May from COVID.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. So during this time, COVID hit, everything got bad for trials for everyone, not just my sister's case, but everyone. And so there have been a lot of things and changes that have occurred, but that day never leaves my head because I have a recurring dream that I actually see him killing her in her kitchen, but I'm on the ceiling and I cannot get to her. I'm yelling, I'm screaming, but I'm paralyzed. And so I do have therapy for this. And the therapist said, that's probably because you have guilt for not being able to save her. And it's just going to keep happening. It'll go away when the trial's over. I don't know about that. But there is the thing that I have saved my sister from many things, but not from being murdered. So I guess that is going to happen for a while. But it doesn't happen all the time, and it doesn't happen as often as it used to. But it is a reoccurring dream, and I think it has to do with being the twin bond, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But
now you're going to have to go through, and eventually, I assume you're going to go to the trial and see that out. But you're going to have to go there without two of the most important people in your life.
Yep.
How challenging is that going to be for you? Are you planning on how you're going to handle that? What you're going to do?
I have to tell you, and this may sound strange to you, but when my sister first was murdered On the second day, I couldn't sleep, obviously, and I was lying down in my room, which I thought I was dreaming. My sister was sitting on the edge of my bed, and she had a crown of roses on her head. And I asked her, "What is this shit on your head for?" And she laughed, and she smiled in a way with such a peaceful look on her face. It was, I can't describe it, but it was very beautiful. And I said, "Why did you leave me?" And she said, "I'm with Jesus and Mama. And remember, you have always been the stronger twin, but I have strength too. God doesn't want you to be mad at him. So I came here to give you my strength." I have never forgot that. And if I was dreaming, it was one of the most peaceful things. It gave me a little bit of peace there. It made me not angry at God. And I was trying to focus and just understand why. And there's no understanding. It's not going to happen. But because she said, "I'm leaving you my strength," I feel, and I have to get through it. Even when my husband was here, I had to be the stronger one. And I mean, you have to face him in court every time. That's really challenging. But I feel like I do have the courage and her power. We had superpower together, if that makes any sense to you. Even though she's not here, she delivered a message to me that I accept. I am the captain of this journey, and to get her justice, I don't have a choice, Mike. I don't have a choice but to fight for her justice and keep the strength that was willed to me. I accept it. And so when I do go in the courtroom, I haven't gone in without my husband. I did have a conversation, a Microsoft Office meeting with the attorneys, the Pima County's attorney's office. And they have said this to me: "You have incredible strength. I wouldn't have it if I wasn't a twin."
Yeah.
But I think that's where it comes from. And I'm happy that I was blessed to be a twin. So I'm going to take those words she said and forge through whatever I have to. I don't have a choice, Mike.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's still a connection to her, even though she's not here, obviously, physically? Do you still feel that she's with you?
Yeah, of course. You know, it's funny because we look alike, right? The one thing that, again, if you're not a twin, you wouldn't get it. When I put makeup on in the mirror, I can't look at myself in a full-length mirror because I see my sister's face. And even though it's mine, it's still her face. So I have to put makeup on a small mirror so I don't have to look at the entire face. And not that it scares me or anything. It's just I start to cry because that's my sister, but it's me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's, I don't know. There's so many. Definitely she comes through. Like this morning when I was looking at Facebook and I was getting ready to get your call, there was a memory that popped up, and it said, and it was from her 5 years ago when she was sick: "I can't live without my sister."
Wow. It's almost like it came up at the right time, like as if, there was, she's thinking of you or something along those lines.
Or saying, "You can do this."
Yeah, just as a little push for you to have something positive. Wow, that's very cool.
Yeah. There's lots of things that come through like that, lots of things, and this was just one thing this morning. So there's a way to adjust your grief because that never goes away. What I do every morning when I get up is we had a very happy childhood. Like being a twin was really extra special, and so I think of a good memory so that I don't cry all day. And people think, oh, you're so strong. No, I do cry. I do have moments, and I try to talk myself out of it, and I do every day. And now I have double grief, so it's challenging, but I have to do what I have to do. I'm left here for a reason, and I will get justice for my sister. And really, when you think about it, there's not really justice when your loved ones are murdered. There's justice for the state. There's justice for the prosecutor. It just gives the family a little bit of peace. And I think we deserve that. And he has so many charges against him. And hopefully he gets, the proper sentence. He has no bail. There was a time when they gave him $1 million bail, but they took it away. He has no bail.
Oh. Well, I think he's right where he belongs. He sounds like a very dangerous person that could do something like this, and hopefully the court proceedings go as they should, and he stays where he's at. It sounds like Nene would be very proud of you having the strength to go on, especially after losing your husband, and to face this. And you mentioned Nene was sort of a surrogate mom to your kids, and and how are your kids and Nene's husband, how are they getting through this? How are they dealing with all this?
I think for my brother-in-law, Robert, it's a day-by-day thing. He spends a lot of time here with us as a family. We're the only family he has. He has no other family. So we try, he's not a real emotional person, or he doesn't show emotion. So I don't have to deal with the breakdowns or anything. We just, cheer each other on the best we can. My other two daughters, they have two daughters that live in California. They don't have to deal with, the everyday sadness here in their face, but they are very heartbroken over it because, she was like their mom. But my daughter, Lorraine, that's named after her, she was the closest to her. And she's the one who named her Nene, and it's stuck. She suffers a lot without my sister here. And I mean, when my sister got killed and my children all came to Tucson, we were all together at the same time. And I still had to go to the morgue to see my sister. I had not seen her since death. So that was very challenging, especially when the police tell you that your sister's body is a crime scene. So you have to wait. What? Right? Okay, so we did. And when all my children came here, all of these Nene stories were coming out. Okay, Mike, we were so identical that when my children got in trouble at school that I knew nothing about until my sister died, and my kids are in their 40s, all three of them, she took them to school as me and got them out of trouble.
Oh, wow. So she was the cool aunt that would do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. She was the cool aunt. Cool. Nene will save the day. And Nene did. But it was funny to hear them say that because they were like, are you mad, Mom? Because Nene took me and I got suspended. And I was like, there's nothing I can do. You graduated from school many years ago. However, Nene's not here for me to yell at. It's just amazing the things you learn about your sister. But those are the cool things that we could do for each other. Oh. But I didn't know about that till that day. But yes, they're heartbroken. They are very heartbroken. And they will be here for the trial, all three of them. Wow. We're just, it keeps changing. And it changed again. It was supposed to be on May 17th. And it's changing again. I'll find out at the end of this week. Yeah.
Well,
It's great.
it's good that you're all there to support each other. And again, hopefully things go according to plan and he stays where he's at and doesn't get out to hurt anyone else. And I know you mentioned earlier that you talk about Nene in the present, like she's still here, and try and keep her alive with you. But obviously she's not here to spend time with you, to do the things that you used to do. But what is it that you missed most about her?
So every day my sister came over here, right? Every day, 7 o'clock in the morning. We drank coffee together. We both have very loud, obnoxious laughs, and they're identical. Very loud. And so in the morning, we would go outside on my patio and drink coffee and talk about things, people, whatever. And remember this, remember that, just going down memory lane. And that laughter where we was uncontrollable at times, where the tears came out of your eyes. And she was very funny. And she said I was funny, but I thought she was too. I miss that. Every day, some kind of laughter that we shared, that I have not laughed like that since my sister died. I have learned to laugh again, don't get me wrong, but not like that. That was hearty, jolly, jovial, whatever you want to call it. It was hard. And that's something we did since we were children. And I'm not going to get that back. I miss my sister's hugs, and my children say the same thing. There was nothing like a Nene hug. She hugged hard. I miss that.
It sounds like you're definitely, without her, there's a piece of you missing, but it also sounds like that you feel her still, and that's a good thing, that despite her not actually being here with you, that you feel and you remember things about her that still make you smile.
Yeah, that's how you get through it. You keep her memory alive, and you have to move forward. It's baby steps, and it's hard. But I still, if I had justice already, I would feel relaxed a little bit more. But I'm not there, so I have to find a way to get through every morning, day, because you mourn forever. Yeah. That part doesn't ever go away. And now without Danny, it's just like double mourning is very difficult, because you have to set aside who you're going to grieve for today.
Yeah,
it's hard.
Yeah, that's a situation where it's not, I'm sad, but am I sad because I'm thinking about so-and-so today, or is it the other person, or is it a mixture of both people? That's got to be a real tough situation.
Well, I turn around and I'll walk, my sister's urn is here and so is my husband, and I'll walk past my sister and say, I'm sorry, today it's Danny's turn, which is really just a comment I made. And that I know that she knows, because she loved my husband and he loved her. And if anything was strange, was the first set of husbands didn't get our bond, but our second really did. So that really helped.
Wow.
It really, really helped, because, she was always welcome in my home by my husband, and he did for her when she was sick. And they were both amazing, and the loss is significant. It is huge, but grief is hard. And, people say it'll get better with time. It doesn't get better. They're not coming back. So it doesn't get better. It just gets, your brain somehow develops to accept that you're grieving. And that's what I do every day. That's till I die. And I refuse Mike to die until my sister gets justice. So ain't gonna happen.
Well, I think she'd be proud of you, and I want to thank you for coming on and discussing her case and the tragedy that happened. And I hope you hold up that strength and determination and until you get that justice, until you for her, and honor her memory.
Thank you, and I appreciate you letting me tell my story, and my sisters, and she would appreciate it too.
Yeah, thank you. And it's a very powerful story too. And just the twin thing is a little bit unusual. So anytime I talk to someone who's a twin and they tell me these kind of things, I'm just fascinated by it. And it's, I think any relationship with siblings is a special one, but the twin one always seems to be very powerful.
It is. It's a very powerful thing. And to me, like I said earlier, it's normal to me. So I don't know any other life but a twin. So being now separated is, who am I? I want my life back, but that's not going to happen. So, forge ahead is all I can do.
Yeah.
And with her spirit around me, I know I can do it.
Thank you once again for joining me for this episode of The Murder of My Family. I'd like to thank Sonny Landon for writing and research assistance in this episode. As we wrap up, I've got recommendations for not just one, but two true crime podcasts I think you'll really enjoy. Stolen Lives and Dealing Justice. Be sure to check them both out. We'll be back here soon with an all-new episode of The Murder of My Family, and I hope you'll join me for it. But before you go, remember that every murder victim means something to somebody.
We often hear the stories of parents warning their children about the dangers of strangers. But the reality is, children are more likely to come to harm by people they know and trust than people they don't. Here at Stolen Lives, we believe cases involving crimes against children do not get the attention they deserve. These cases are important, and the victims should not be forgotten. We want to give a voice to those whose lives are lost or stolen. Cases like the brutal murder of Jerilee Underwood, searching for answers for the identity of baby lollipops, and the mysterious unsolved disappearances of Orrin and Orson West. Listen to Stolen Lives on Apple Podcasts, the Acast app, or wherever you listen to great podcasts, like the one you are listening to today.
911, what's the nature of your emergency?
Your world can change in the blink of an eye.
He walked into the bedroom and you know that she had been murdered.
So he's running up and down, screaming, "Oh my God, someone call 911. There are two men killing a girl."
I know my son, and he would not go that long without saying anything to anyone.
Safety can be an illusion and reality a nightmare.
So how do you steal a person, a grown person?
Unspeakable crimes can penetrate any small town, big family, pretty face, or innocent child. And in the wake of a loved one's murder or disappearance, there is nothing more cruel or desperate as silence.
Why won't people talk about it? That's another thing. People don't want to talk about it around here.
For the families of the missing and murdered, they gambled with their sanity as they lose hope in closure and settle for justice. That's where the cold case playing cards come in. In each episode of the Dealing Justice podcast, your hosts Jennifer Dubisak and Lori Jennings will spotlight one card from the cold case playing card deck. Hear the victim's story from the friends and family who knew them best.
Her mom will never stop fighting until she finds out what happens to her daughter.
Learn about the crime and help close the case. Welcome to Season 2. We're not just playing cards, we're dealing justice.